Hi, I'm Mr. Phillips, and in today's video, we're going to take a quick look at some of the basic tools in Adobe Photoshop CS6. So let's get started. Down here in my dock, here on my Mac, here's my icon for Photoshop CS6. I just give that a click. And here's my basic layout for Photoshop. I've got my tools over here on the left. We're talking about those. I've got my color picker over here on the right. My layers panel also over here on the right. We'll look at all of these things today. We're going to start by just making a basic document in Photoshop, something that we can work with. So here we'll just go up here to this menu on the top and hit File, New. Anytime you want to make a blank document in Photoshop, you can go File, New, or just hit Command N, and that'll bring up this menu, the New Document menu. First off, I have a name. I'm going to call this just real simple, Sample 1. Now there's presets here. A lot of times we'll use this US paper, although today I think we're just going to do a default Photoshop size. 7x5 looks good. We can change any of these if we want to, but again, for today, what we're working on, this should be just fine. So I'm going to click OK. And then you see here, I've got just a plain old, kind of small, looks like a piece of paper or maybe a 5x7 photo. Over here in my layers palette, you can see here I've got background. So now we're ready to take a look at some of our tools. I'm going to go over here on the left and we're going to start with the Move tool. One of the first things you need to know about the Move tool is in order to really use it right, you need to make sure that these boxes up here at the top are properly checked. Auto select, group, and show transform controls. Otherwise, when you select something, it won't really work right. In order to have something to work with here in our Photoshop demo, I'm actually going to load a photograph. There's a couple different ways to do this. One of the easiest is to go File. Let's do an Open. And from my desktop, I've got this image here called coffeecup.jpg. And I'm just going to tell it Open. Here's my coffee cup image. Now what I can do is I can actually use the Select menu, select all, and I'm going to edit, cut. Now I go back here to my sample image. I'm going to edit, paste. Now I've got a very large image on top of my sample image. What I'm going to do is move this around, and using the Move tool and the Auto Select, I can actually grab the corners. I can shrink this image down by grabbing the corners and get it so that it fits nicely into my Photoshop document. Kind of like so. Almost like putting a frame around it. Great. When I'm done rearranging my item with the Move tool, I'm going to hit this check mark right here to tell Photoshop that I'm done moving. Of course, I can also use the Move tool to do some other things. If I hover right here on the outside, I get that curve. I can turn my image around, put it wherever I want. The Move tool is very useful. But again, I'm done, so I hit the check mark. The next tool I want to talk about is one that we'll use a lot. I want to look at the Brush tool. It's right here. Click on the Brush tool, and you'll see up here along the top, you've got some options for your brushes. We use the brush tool a lot in class. One of the things you need to be aware of is this right here. If you click that down arrow, you get a lot of different choices for what your brushes will look like. And all of these brushes do different things. They'll all look differently. You can also change the brushes that you have and what this menu looks like by hitting this gear. I can go down here and I can usually use like a large list. These will tell me the names of the brushes and what the tips look like. If I want to go back to see the strokes, I can go down here to stroke thumbnail. This gives me an idea of what the brushes will look like when I use them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and add some edges to this photograph. So I want something kind of rough. Let's try this. And I want to know what that's called. So I'm going to go back to the large list. Apparently this is called a dry brush on towel. So now what I'm going to do is I can get out of this. I'm going to go over here. I'll click my color picker. You can see I've got a little eyedropper right here. I'm just going to grab this dark brown, almost black. It's on the edge of the coffee cup. Click OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of painting right on top of this. And I've got a draw pad here, but what it's going to do is it's going to kind of paint in the edges of this coffee cup and make it look a little bit distressed and dirty. And that's kind of what I'm going for. Looking good. I'm going to do a little bit around these bottom edges too. There. Now it's just giving that coffee cup kind of a different look. That's sort of what I'm going for. Great. If I want to change my brush, let's say maybe I want to do some additional strokes down here. I can go up here. Let's change and go to basic brushes. And I can hit OK. And now I have basic brushes. I'm going to use a soft mechanical. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my color again. I'm going to grab this reddish color. And then I'm just going to dab some of that down here along the bottom, like so. So the next tool let's look at is the eraser. Since we were using the brush, now let's try the eraser. If we go right down here, this is the eraser tool right here. We just want regular eraser. You can use brushes with your eraser tool just like you use with the brush tool. This time I'm going to go with a soft mechanical 60 and I'm going to erase some of the edges of my photo. What this is doing is just kind of changing the edge of my photo, softening it up. Now I want it to look a little more gritty. Watch what happens if I change my brushes. Let's go back to, let's try dry media brushes. Okay. And I want the stroke thumbnail again. And I want something kind of rough. Let's try this one. Ooh, too much. Maybe this one. Not enough. Well, I can always make it bigger. Okay, now let's try this. Oh, I like that. Look what that's doing to the edges of my picture. It's kind of cool. That's what I want. Maybe a little bigger than I would have liked, but you get the idea. I'm just going to go down here along the bottom too. There you go. Looks pretty cool. The next tool I want to use is the paint bucket. What I'm going to do with the paint bucket is I'm going to grab a color that I want. I'm going to use kind of this reddish brown about there. I'm just going to use the paint bucket, and it's going to hopefully paint in this white area that I erased. Just like so. Color may be a little bit darker than I would have liked, but it works. I can also, underneath, if I hold down the paint bucket, I can get the gradient tool. So maybe if I go up here, I can change gradients. Maybe I'll try this. Now if I just draw across here like so, too much. It's going to go over the top. I'm going to put that gradient on the background. Kind of just changed it a little bit underneath. That's fine. The next tool we want to look at is the text tool. Right here, if I click T for text, it's going to take a minute to load up the different fonts that you see up here at the top. I'm going to find a fun font that I can use for my coffee. And all I'm going to do is just click right here on the picture. And then I'm going to type in what I want it to say. Coffee time. Exclamation point. Now you can see this is kind of small, but if I go back to our friend, the move tool right here, grab my text and make it bigger. Coffee time. And I can even angle it a little bit, kind of like so. Move it where I want it. And then what do? I hit the check. Now I've got some cool text right here. Looking good. The last tool that we want to show you today is right here. This is the shape tool. There's a lot of different shape tools here. We're going to go down here to the, well, let's make a rounded rectangle. Let's go, we need to click a layer in order to use it. And I'm just going to make a little rounded rectangle down across the bottom. Helps if you change your color. Otherwise, I can't see it. I'm going to make it white. All the way white. And rounded rectangle. Like so. Again, it's just putting, in this case, kind of a frame down along the bottom. You can also do a more interesting shape. If you hold down the shape picker, or use this part. Hold down the shape picker. Come on, shape picker. There we go. I can use the custom shape tool. And you can see if I grab this, I have lots of different fun shapes to work with. Let's try a musical instrument. Or musical note. If I just drag it like so, there's my music note. Chances are, when you're using the shape tool, you probably want to change this from pixels to shape. Because now, if I make my music note, I can actually use the move tool. I can move it around. Apply. And now if you look at our image, we've got kind of a fun, quirky coffee time, maybe postcard, something like that. It's just a sample image getting you to use the move tool, brush tool, the eraser, paint bucket, text tool, and the shape tool.